All right, we are live and she back on the scene. Look, just in
I'm,
time. I just pushed the
I'm not.
live
I'm not gonna
button.
say hey Lucian again. I know.
Y'all, welcome everyone to Sisters for Harmony. We are super excited for you to be here this evening. And we have some fabulous guests tonight. And this is you know how they talk about a crossover event? It's going to be a crossover event, it's a double hitter. We're going for all of it this evening. And so we're going to start tonight with, I call her a forgiveness specialist. Abigail Sykes is here. I'm going to have her introduce herself in a moment. And then, of course, we have friend to the show, Dr. Natasha Ramontal, medical tourism herself. The chat is already popping. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. And of course, we have Brother Ed Umoja Herman, who's going to hold it down for us as well. Yes. Uh, we're going to lift you up. And a big shout out to Ruby Burke, who is our Vice President of Sisters for Harmony. For those who don't know, Sisters for Harmony is our registered 501c3 nonprofit, which looks at empowering women and helping them really live their life with purpose and on purpose. And so we do this vodcast, excuse me, so that people are empowered, connected, networking, and creating educational opportunities. So, with that said, make sure you got your pen and paper ready because we always giving out some valuable information. We want to make sure you catch it. And I'm going to pass the mic to Brother Umoja so you can open us up as you always do. So, have at it, Brother Umoja.
Well, thank you, Dr. Walls.
You're welcome.
So first and foremost, we greet you in the name of God and our ancestors, in whose footsteps we most humbly walk, understanding that we are just a vessel that the Creator uses to empower and enlighten the global community.
Mhm. All right. Now, someone, I hear an echo or another show playing in the background. Does anybody else hear that? If you don't hear it, it means it's probably coming from an open tab on my end.
I don't hear it.
You don't hear it? Okay, so it's me. No problem. So, with that said, Abigail, please, then let me explain this. So, Abigail came into our life because Dr. Louise Wade, who is the visiting veterinarian that joins us at Green Street Animal Care once to twice a month, was listening to my Planner's Knowledge podcast last week excuse me, my Walls of Wellness podcast last week with author and life coach Danielle Lawrence. And after the show, she sent me a message and she said, I know the perfect person that should be your next guest. And I said, who is that? And she said, Abigail Sykes. And I said, now, do you know this person personally? And she said, yes. I said, all right, make the connection. And she made the connection right then and there. And it was date night last Wednesday when it happened. And so she was like, do not send that email. Do not send that email tonight. You wait till tomorrow. And I was like, nope, you told me to get in contact with Abigail. I'm getting in contact with Abigail right now. I
My wife don't listen.
look,
On date night.
look on date
Yeah.
night. And he was working on our web series Kadaga, which for those who don't know is about eliminating human trafficking in all of its forms. You can check that out on YouTube. We're currently in production for season 4. But that was how it started. And so now I'm excited. Abigail said, how about I come on next Thursday at 7? I said, girl, it's like, that's the exact time that'll work. I mean, she hit it. So, Abigail, introduce yourself to these people because they want to talk about forgiveness. So, come on.
Oh, this is wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm just grateful. And I'm grateful to Dr. Wade for just recommending me for this show. And I just appreciate her so much. And I just think it's just so awesome because this is near and dear to my heart, forgiveness,
Hmm.
and I just think that it truly empowers individuals to be able to just let go. And I
Hmm.
just really am thankful for those that see the vision that, to recommend, this topic to someone because it's not an easy topic. It's a very difficult topic. It is very difficult. And I've learned that on my journey, since doing this. Again, my name is Abigail Sykes. I am a registered nurse of over 25 years now.
Mm.
And I have experience in acute care, hospice, long-term care, and about in 2018, well, let's go back a little bit further just to tell you a little bit about my story and how this whole subject of forgiveness pretty much started with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I had started, I'd gone through a pretty bad divorce, and I held on to the hurt, the pain, the resentment of that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I, for about 7 years to be exact.
But you're not counting. It's not right.
Who's counting?
It ain't got nothing to do with like, I forgive you, but I won't forget 7 years. Go ahead.
And how long it took me to get there,
Yes.
you know? So it was one of those things where this is something that I never thought I would do. You know, I'm not really a public speaker, like, you know, didn't come from that, and never thought something that I would do or wanted to do. I was a nurse, so it was like, okay, I'm going to work, and that's what I'm going to do because I just help to, you know, heal people and treat people.
Mm-hmm.
And in the midst of all that, I was going through my own hurt and my own emotional pain to the point where I thought, you know, what's the point? What am I here for? There's no point in me being here. And I wrote a book, and it's called Purposeful Healing. And in that, I talk about it. And I remember, and I talk about it in the book, like I said, one particular night, crying out to God, like, you have to really relieve me from this, because it was the first thing that I thought about in the morning when I got up, and the last thing when I went to bed. And it was times when I would wake up in the middle of the night just in agony. And I said to him, this is going to kill me if I don't let this go. And at that time, the Lord just kind of opened up. That particular night, I cried so hard until I just couldn't take it anymore. I went into the bathroom because I didn't want my son to hear me. So the Lord whispered to me, I want you to do this. I want you to put a forgiveness program together, and I want you to share it with others. Not only is it going to help you, but it's going to help somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the shower and I'm crying. And when he said that, it was clear as day. And I said to myself, what? You want me to do what? Yes, that's what I want you to do. And this is how I want you to start. So he gave me an entire program, and I started it in my church. And we put together a program on forgiveness. And what the focus of it was really showing, like, the benefits of forgiveness. What happens to your body physically when you don't let go?
Ooh.
So, and, you know, we took different topics of people and excessive eating and becoming obese, cancer. We talked about the mental health piece of it when you can't let go. And so it started there. And so it was a great program. It really, really started off well. And in that, the Lord just gave me tools and steps. And, you know, it's one thing to tell someone to forgive. And it's awesome to be able to, you know, quote scripture, you know, and the Lord tell us that we should forgive. And it is, and we need that. But then I would find myself saying, okay, so I know I need to forgive, but where do I begin? How do I start? You know, and so the Lord gave me the tools for that as well. So then when I talk to individuals, I actually coach on steps on how to forgive.
Okay.
And so that's how it all just kind of started.
Wow. Now, Dr. Ramontal, that head went back a little bit strong on one of them nods. What went?
Yeah, no, I love her story and why it led to this area. And I think it's so unique, you know, because forgiveness, people don't think about it, but forgiveness, your health depends on it,
Yeah.
you know, and it's an active process that can help improve your health and your well-being. And my channel focuses on medical tourism for Black women. I educate them on all aspects of medical tourism. If they try to seek any type of care, treatment abroad, I just educate them on what they need to know. And one of the things that's becoming a big boom in the medical tourism industry is these types of retreats, forgiveness and healing retreats, mental health retreats, luxury medical tourism retreats, or even neurosurgical care. If you go for a major surgery, after you go through your process of recovery, then they start working on the inner things that, which include forgiveness, which include any past trauma. So I find it really interesting how much it's sort of spilling over into medical tourism where you probably wouldn't think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Brother Moja, what's going through your mind?
A lot.
Mhm.
I mean, when you look at forgiveness and you're talking about that, that's on you first. They always say, forgive yourself, and then you could forgive people. You could forgive them and don't forgive yourself, and then you know what, you keep on why you're so miserable.
Yeah.
So the most, I think, when you're talking about that, is just like learn to forgive yourself, because when you forgive yourself, that's like the first part of the forgiveness process, and then from there you can forgive people if you really want to.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's the first part, like you said, but it's often the forgotten part. And the work that I do clinically, that's one of the exercises that I go through with them is about forgiving yourself and looking yourself in the mirror, looking at your eyes when you forgive yourself, speaking to your soul so that you and whatever age of you needs to be forgiven because you are the culmination of every age that you've ever been. So it may be that 18-year-old that made that choice that you are still harboring some unforgiveness about. Go ahead, Abigail. I see you shaking your head. Go ahead.
I just totally agree with that because, when you're younger and you're 18 years old and you do something that being a knucklehead, being young, being, out of control, thinking that you just know more than anyone else and you know more than your peers, you know more than the wisdom that comes, from someone older than you. And then you make a mistake, or make a decision that's not, beneficial to your life and where you're trying to go. And sometimes those things can prevent you from getting far, getting to where you want to go in life, because now you have this thing that you did. And it's like, okay, now I have that constant reminder of what I did. Now, how do I, let that go within? Because it's stopping me, it's preventing me from getting that job I want.
That's right.
It's preventing me from freedom, because we have people that are incarcerated right now that are dealing with things that they wish they could take back, and they are dealing with emotionally because they can't let go and they can't forgive themselves.
Yep. Dr. Ramontal, what's going through your mind?
It's interesting. I'm thinking about how we said it all begins with you, because really you hold on to whatever it is you can't seem to forgive someone about. And I'm thinking about it. I'm saying to myself, there's so many people I hear that block themselves from forgiveness because of what they feel is the need to, I need closure. I need closure. The closure can start with you by forgiving, And the thing is, I think they associate it with letting it go as if whatever they can't seem to forgive about is trivial. And it doesn't mean that. It simply means that you have released this person's hold over you with the feelings that come with it. Because half the time, they don't even know that they've affected you that much.
Yes.
Oh
Real talk. So, Abigail, how do you even define forgiveness?
I define it as the ability to be able to let go of past hurt and resentment and get to a place to be able to heal and to live a purposeful life. The life that you were, that you were born to live.
Yeah. And so do you, in your experience, right? Because everybody's experience with forgiveness is different. Do you feel as though all things can be forgiven, or are there some unforgivable deal breakers? Like, no, it's not even possible.
I think that all things can be forgiven, but this is, why I say that, because the forgiveness is a process, and
Say it again,
it takes
Abigail.
time.
Say it again. Forgiveness is a process.
process and it takes time. And I can't tell you when to be ready. No one can tell you when to be ready. And you have to at least want it. You know, it starts with you wanting to forgive yourself and wanting to forgive, an offender. It starts with you.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I totally agree. It is a process. I think many times it is a loop, meaning that you think you've forgiven and then you come up in contact with a life event or scenario and it triggers,
Mhm.
right, an unhealed space, or it triggers a memory that maybe is a little, we get cut and their scab can be a little bit tender and
Mhm.
it's not fully finished healing yet, and something happens and it pulls that wound back open, and then you got to loop back into a forgiveness cycle. Go ahead, Abigail. You shaking your head like, yep, yep.
I absolutely agree. It's a loop. And the one thing I look at that is if you have, how do you know that you have truly forgiven someone?
Thank you.
Yes.
you know and
Mhm.
to me, I feel like you can truly have that feeling and know that you have forgiven someone if you can be in the same room
Yep.
with that person. Okay, you can be in the same room with them, and then maybe the next day or two you realize I did pretty well with that. Oh my goodness,
Mhm.
my heart didn't beat out of my chest. I didn't break out into a sweat. I
Honey.
didn't go over and poke their eyes out. And
Yes.
so that's when But if you still dealing with it and you're reminded of that situation, and then you pull back in it, and then those emotions start going again, then you truly have more work to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm.
Go ahead, Dr. Ramontal. What's going through your mind?
Now I'm taking that in because you do sometimes feel that you have forgiven someone, but you don't truly know until you're in a situation where you're physically around them.
Yes.
And then sometimes you wonder, well, what was all the work I thought I did
Come
when I
on.
thought I actually forgave them,
Mhm.
or could it be that sometimes you do forgive them, but maybe whatever was done was so traumatic that
Mhm.
it's very difficult to be in that space.
Mhm.
I don't know. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Abigail.
Yeah, I think that, when you truly, like I said, when you truly forgive someone, you just know, you just have that feeling. It's not something that you can say to yourself. It's not something that someone can tell you, oh, you've forgiven them. No, it's a feeling that you have to have within yourself to
Mhm.
know that, I have really overcome this, and
Mhm.
be proud of, where you are. And
Mhm.
so I just think it's just really, it's work. Like I said, it's process, and you really have to just really go through the steps to
Yeah.
be able to let go and understand the benefits of it. Like, what are the benefits of me letting go of this?
Mhm. Mhm. We're going to get to those benefits. I want to say that I think forgiveness is layered, because when there is a violation, we have to identify what is the forgiveness for, right? What violation has taken place? So, be it a violation of trust, a violation of emotional intimacy, a violation of, like, there was a physical boundary or something, right? So we have to look at all of the ways in which in which we feel and felt violated and or victimized. And until we're clear on all of those levels, then, and layers as well, because there's also different levels of intensity with each of the violations that have occurred. And so we have to be honest about that within self first, um, because the forgiveness doesn't come from the person saying, will you forgive me? The forgiveness really happens all internally, and the person may not ever know that they've been forgiven. So you got to work through it. You got to know where your energy has experienced whatever, again, I use the word violations, the infringements, the boundary crossings, because sometimes we don't even know it's been a boundary crossing until someone crossed it. We didn't know it was a thing that would warrant forgiveness until it happened. And then once we realize that, now then we got to take honest inventory and say, what do we need in order for that healing to occur? And sometimes it is that checkpoint of when we come into contact with that person, and that contact can be actual physical contact. It can be seeing their name on your phone. It can be seeing their picture on a social media post, and you feel that rumble in your stomach. You feel, you island people like the choops. You feel that
It's
come
not
up.
island
You
people.
feel you feel that eye roll go, right? That lets you know you still tender, right?
Yeah, still tender.
Go ahead, Abigail.
So I agree with that. It is layers, and it's also kind of just dealing with one of the steps that I kind of start with is the cause. What is the cause of your pain? Why are you feeling the way that you do? What
Yeah.
happened exactly? Because
Yeah.
sometimes we forget, it's in our subconscious. We're just walking around angry at the world, and the world did me wrong. And so then we just have this, not really dealing with what the cause is. And it's like, okay, you start there. So what's the cause of your pain? And how do you really focus in that area? We have so many different things that happens through our lives that cause us to hold on to things, so many negative things. And if you don't have any, then just get ready, because they're coming. So then it's like understanding how to build your toolbox, how to build your box for resiliency when things like this happen, so that you yourself can be strong internally, as well as physically, to be able to handle these things. And I just think that we live in a world now, we just know what is going to happen next. And so it's really about starting and dealing with the cause, and just really starting to just own it, acknowledge that you are in pain, because sometimes we don't acknowledge that we don't want to. It's I don't care. I'm fine. I don't have to deal with that. But then eating us up on the inside.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Ramontal. What's going through your mind?
You already know there's something.
I ain't even had to look at you. I felt it. Go ahead.
Oh man, I was thinking about it and just taking in what Abigail's saying, and I'm saying to myself, how does this play out generationally? If you, maybe as a parent, haven't forgiven someone for something, how does that work? Can you, in a sense, pass some of that on to your children? Like, how does that work? Because that's something that I've always thought about. How can you teach it if you don't actually practice it?
Right. Exactly. And so that's one of the things that.
Why are you laughing, St. Lucian? Why are you laughing?
We do that all the time. Parents do it all the time. I mean,
do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, because we don't like someone, and we tell our kids don't play with their kids.
Yeah.
And we tell them, oh, don't talk to that person, and then your kids don't know why we're telling them, but then they grow up not talking to that person.
Yes.
You take it generational, you pass it on to your kids. And we know that in the Caribbean. I guess
Oh my gosh.
I'm not talking. Don't talk to the people.
Yes. Yes. My spirit doesn't take me. Their spirit doesn't take me.
And
that's
you
it.
grow up not knowing why.
I'll talk to that one.
Not knowing why.
Yeah, we grow up. Why am I not talking to? Because my parents told me not to talk. Why did your parents say? I don't know. So we get that all the time, and it's a shame that we as parents do that to our children. And so it's we need to acknowledge that, and also we have to acknowledge that what was the violation. Sometimes we don't know the violation is. We just know, I don't like you anymore. Why don't I like you anymore? What did that person do, or what happened that made you not like that person anymore? And so when we and then that just eats you up, because every time you see the person, you get upset, and you don't know why you're getting upset. And that really bothers. That give you a stomach ache, ulcers, whatever. Because then if you're working with that person, if you had a job with that person, that's a situation, because then you cannot do your work correctly to its full
Mm-hmm.
potential. And then, you carry that on, and it could fester into something worse because you haven't identified what the violation was or what happened.
Yep.
And that forgiveness, and you're forgiving yourself. How could you forgive yourself if you don't know what happened?
Mm.
As you say, I'm forgive myself for what? What happens? I have to forgive myself. So
Right.
you have to sit down, you have to, dissect it or whatever you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as a parent, we gotta be careful about that. We don't want to pass it. One of the things I grew up with, and I still struggle with it now. My mother did not like cauliflower. I never know why she didn't like it. And she passed it on to me where I really don't. So one day I was sitting there, I was like, why don't I like cauliflower? And I was like, oh, my mom didn't like it. Why didn't she like it? I can't ask her. She's made her transition already. So I had to consciously make the decision to eat cauliflower and see what was bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was okay with me. I still don't really eat it, but at least now I know why. And I'm like, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be, and we have to be thinking, we have to be very mindful of that. And Dr. Walls, I talk about, with my son.
Mm-hmm.
I made a conscious decision from when he was born to tell him, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, because I wanted to break that mold where I never really heard my father say it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know if his father didn't say it to him, but all I know, I never really heard it. So I had to, within myself, find like the forget, see what it was and forgive myself. So I had to make a conscious decision. And sometimes that's what that comes down to. We making a conscious decision to sit down, see what do we need to forgive, what do we need to work on to alleviate certain things from our lives so we could have a more productive, more positive life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So much to say with that, but Abigail, I want you to go ahead and speak. What's going through your
Okay.
mind?
So what's going through my mind is just responding to Dr. Natasha when she said, "Can you pass that down generationally?" And that
Mm-hmm.
is one of the things that's in that I teach under the cause. Is it a generational curse? And when you think about it, we all know a big one, and that is racism.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about racism, it's passed down. It's from a child. They're learning to be racist, right? It's not
Mm-hmm.
based on what's happened. It's not based on a lot of time they're something that was directly done to them by, someone of color. It's because it was passed down from generation to generation. So we pass
Mm-hmm.
those feelings down. We don't speak to this person because my mom and dad said we don't like them, and you don't know why.
Yeah.
And that's really, getting to the point of why you need to forgive this and get over this and how this could be holding you back,
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
forward.
I think, you mentioned a couple things, and I see in the chat people started, and Dr. Wade is in the house. Hello, Dr. Wade. She wrote down for people to identify and name the offense, and so started giving people some great tips. So I believe in people doing stuff in real time. Y'all already know. I say make sure you have your pen and piece of paper handy. If there's certain people coming to mind that you feel as though their forgiveness needs to happen around or within that relationship, I would say jot down their name right now, or the names that come to mind for you. And you may find some names popping up like, where in the world did that come from? I don't care. If it pops up, write it down because it's coming to your mind for a reason. And then afterwards, as Abigail mentioned, right, what's the cause? Right? Jot down what the cause is. What comes to mind when that person where forgiveness needs to happen or could happen, right? Would be a benefit to your life. Because as Abigail shared with us, right, it can impact your health. Brother Moja talked about it causing ulcers and literally eating you in your inside. Um, problems with your gall, right? The gall bladder. Like, I can't believe that person had the nerve, right? That's the gall. So we end up with all types of physical ailments because we have a mind body feeling, a mind body spirit connection. And if we don't express, meaning to push out our feelings in some way, preferably a healthy way, if we don't express it, it stays and it lives inside of us and it manifests into something. Back pain, neck pain, ulcers, different things like that. Go ahead, Abigail. I'm hitting the spot.
Yes, cancer,
Mm-hmm.
diabetes. You think
Mm-hmm.
about diabetes when, if you're someone who that's obese
Mm-hmm.
because your coping mechanism is food. And
Come
then you
on.
end up being a diabetic
Yeah.
because you really didn't take the right steps to be able to heal, but food makes you feel better. It
Yeah.
gives you that dopamine effect because it gives you that immediate feeling. And the more you have it, the more you need it, the more you want it. But
Yeah.
then what happens is that you end up with addictions and then you end up with
Mm.
essentially diabetes. And I
Yeah.
remember I had a young man who was had congestive heart failure. And
Mm-hmm.
he really couldn't, we would send him to the hospital and he just kept going back. We called them frequent flyers. And they
Mm-hmm.
just keep coming
Mm-hmm.
back to the same thing. And he would go home and eat a bag of potato chips. And we would tell him, why are you eating a bag of potato chips? You cannot have the sodium. But then
Mm-hmm.
in talking to him, he really shared something with me and he said, I just get down because my daughter, I'm not allowed to see her. Her mom just kind of ripped her from me and moved away to Virginia, and I can't see her. I can't talk to her. But that's what
Mm-hmm.
made him feel better, So
Mm-hmm.
then he's treating himself with things that's going to harm him in the long run. So it's
Yeah.
really about understanding how, those ineffective coping mechanisms that we introduce, even drugs. We see people that are falling over and they're drugged, and and sometimes we judge them. But at the same time,
Mhm.
that's their coping mechanism. So how do
Yeah.
we get people to have more effective coping
Yeah.
mechanisms?
Yeah. Thank you. That's such a good point. Dr. Ramontal, what you thinking?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the inability to cope and thinking about how um, all of that plays into behavioral health, mental health, and how
Mm-hmm.
that it has become a little bit less destigmatized, at least
Yes.
since COVID in
Yes.
2020. A lot of that had to do more with the isolation everyone experienced because we were trying to be safe or keep our families safe
Mm-hmm.
by not going around them. And I just thought to myself, a lot of times pre-COVID, the stigma surrounding mental health and behavioral health was predominantly because people thought, oh, you have an illness, a mental illness. Not that that's not a part of it, but a lot
Mm-hmm.
of it has to do with people's inability to cope,
Yes.
and her coping mechanism,
Yes.
loss of a job, loss of a loved one, grieving. It
Mm-hmm.
could be anything. And I just find it interesting that all of that, ties in even to when you're talking about forgiveness.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
yeah, no, it's really fascinating how all of that ties into each other.
Yeah, and I'm so glad both of you mentioned a couple of things that triggered thoughts in my mind. So, Abigail, to your point, right? The coping, how we choose to cope. If you are coping through comfort food, how that leads to physical challenges, be it obesity potentially, be it diabetes, you know, depending on what you're eating, blood pressure. So many times we're not looking at the interrelated and interconnected nature of all of this. We throw out things like mind, body, spirit connection, but really honestly looking at it and honoring that mind, body, spirit connection becomes so important. Even with being able to sleep properly. If
Mhm.
you are, angry with someone, you're grinding your teeth sometimes. So there's that piece. But your mind is ruminating over the event that happened or the anger or the get back. I just wish they would, right? And instead of honestly praying for somebody, oh, I'm gonna pray for you, right? But there ain't nothing sanctified in the way in which that prayer is being delivered, right?
Yes.
So, but all of
Mhm.
those things, and it impacts our adrenal glands. It
Mhm.
impacts our ability to restore ourselves effectively. It impacts our immune system. It keeps our central nervous system in fight, flight, or freeze. So we end up tearing ourselves down. We end up creating more opportunities for sickness. Now, I know I'm speaking in both of you. Y'all are nurses, so I'm preaching to the choir here. So y'all can back me up. I don't have to be the lead singer. Go ahead. Go, go
I
ahead,
hear you.
Abigail. Go ahead.
I just think that is so true. It is just so important for us to be able to figure out how to be able to, to let go.
Mm-hmm.
We're just constantly going over things over and over again in our head. I had this gentleman, when we talk about like the importance of being able to just kind of let it go. This gentleman, he was probably in his 30s, and I went to see him for medical reasons. And
Mm-hmm.
he had an altercation with a cousin who was a very close cousin to him. And so then what happened was all of a sudden he was washing dishes and the guy came up behind and grabbed him around the neck, choked him out,
Mm.
fractured like all the bones in his face. His
Yeah.
mouth was wired shut. He had to have multiple surgeries. He almost died.
Wow.
He almost died. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but he was walking around and he was angry. He was
Mm-hmm.
on pins. The house was on pins and needles. He had young kids in the house. He had his young wife in the house. And when I would go and see him, he just had this like look on his face, like he was just enraged. And so then when
Mm-hmm.
you talk about revenge and I'm going to get him. So he was in such rage. And I asked him an important question. And I said to him, how much are you willing to give him? And I
Mm-hmm.
said, he gave he took from you. He took, some things from you, but how much more are you willing to give? Are you willing to
Mm-hmm.
give your freedom because you're going to be in jail because if you retaliate,
Mm-hmm.
are you willing to give him your children's father and you're not going to be in the
Mm-hmm.
home because you won't, because you'll be in jail? Are you willing
Yeah.
to give him your wife, your freedom? What are you willing to give him? Your peace,
Mm.
your the joy that you've had in your home. How much more are you willing to give?
Yeah.
And he just kind of brightened up and he was like, I'm good.
Wow.
He
Wow.
was like, I'm good. And it was like his eyes just popped open and it's just like I'm good now,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
somebody, when you think about revenge, sometimes people can do things to you, but you
Yeah.
really have to think about, and when the Lord says vengeance is mine, he means that.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, he's gonna take care of it. I
Mm-hmm.
promise you, he is going to take care of it. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we think we need to take care of it ourselves. He's not going to do it right. He's not moving fast enough. I got to get it done right now. I can't take it in his time. And when he does, and when he takes care of it, trust me, trust me when
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, you're going to come out, hey, you may even write a book about
Yeah,
it.
speaking of which, tell them the name of your book, please, and where they can get it.
The book is Purposeful Healing, and it is
There we go.
available on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about my journey, with things that I had to forgive. There's areas in there of reflection for individuals to kind of go back in their own lives and how do you get to being able to let that go and really understanding like the benefits of it.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I know, this is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and for those who are just joining us, so we're doing a double hitter this evening. So we have this round from 7 to 8, and then Dr. Nia Bailey, who is a radiation therapist and does a lot of work around breast cancer. She'll be joining us at the 8 o'clock hour, and then she's going to turn the tables and interview me about Bullying Awareness Month. Unfortunately, I didn't have the foresight to just keep everybody on the same link. So we'll have to jump off and jump back on a different link. For those who are listening, of course, always, if you click and subscribe to Ask Dr. Walls 525, you're going to see where we will go live and just jump back on that link. But that'll happen at the 8 o'clock hour, Eastern Standard Time. Here's the thing. A lot of times when people are sick, when they have a chronic illness, and I'm going to say a preventable one, where maybe they could have made some different changes with some habits that were created. There's forgiveness that needs to happen there. But then there's also when you have a loved one with a terminal illness. And so my father had cancer. And I remember after he made his transition, my mother's statement was, I can't believe you left me.
Mm.
Right. And so we're a family that looks at this idea of death. We don't call it death, we call it transition. Um, Not because of denial, but because of belief system.
Yes.
And so it was a matter of, and my mother is also very existential. So I was raised on, we are, from the moment we're born, we're in the process of dying. Right? So it's like, here is this concept. This is a part of life. We don't know the day, the hour, or the time, but it's something that's going to happen. As she told the man one time, she had her blood sugar dropped in the dollar store, and she dropped with the blood sugar. And so they called the ambulance and so forth. And she was like, I'm not getting in that thing. And the man said, if you don't get in it, you might die. She said, well, none of us gets out of here alive. To which point I said, sir, she's fine. Like that mouth and that mind right there, that's her. Like it's all good. And so I was like, I'll take her to the hospital. I'll shoulder that and so forth, right? And he was like, but she might die. I said, sir, if she does, it's on me, and I'm good. Like, but I had to step to the side and say to myself, can you manage? Can you navigate this? But with all that being said, when my father did make his transition, she had that real thought, that real emotion. And we had to talk about, like, do you forgive him for making that transition ahead of you? And not going, and I said, what did you think? And she said, like, I just assumed we would go together. I never thought he would leave me. And so there's those feelings, right? Feelings of abandonment, feeling of being left behind, and forgiveness that has to happen on that. And then even forgiveness of self for feeling that way.
Mhm.
And so when we talk about the layers of forgiveness that happen, as well as the intensity of the different pieces of each of those layers. So my mind goes to, Edmund always gets me. He's like, do you realize how many food references you do? Okay, I'm a foodie. So, right, if we think about like one of them good old fashioned coconut cakes with the multiple layers, right?
Mhm.
And then sometimes there's that thinner layer of icing in between. You got to deal with all of those different layers. And sometimes some are harder to get through than others. And sometimes everybody's cake don't taste good. So sometimes you get choked up
It's
on
true.
some of them layers as well. Dr. Ramontal, you said, from
It's
that.
like that.
Sometimes you get choked up
Yeah.
and you can't bite it, meaning you can't get through it as
Mhm.
quickly as you want to. Go ahead, brother Emoji. You over there trying to be quiet. What's up?
I'm just listening. I'm like, yeah, you talk about the layers. It's always there's layers to everything in life. It's just
Mhm.
that do we acknowledge the layers?
Yeah.
And how thick are the layers? Some layers are thick, some layers are thin. And for us men, some I think we have I think we have probably on a general side more thicker layers than women.
Mm.
Because I think women,
Oh, do you now, darling?
yes.
Go ahead. What you thinking?
No, but I think women generally, not all, generally, I think women express themselves more and they're quicker to get to release than men. Now, there's exception to every rule.
Hmm.
I think we men, because I think when we were boys, we were told to don't cry, don't do this, don't do that, be a man, don't do that. So we find ourselves, we build these layers up not to cry, not
Hmm.
not to feel this, not to feel, not to do this. So I think generally, not I'm not saying everybody, generally
Hmm.
men have more thicker layers. So as we become adults, it falls on us. Are we smart enough or intelligent to start getting rid of some of these layers that was
Hmm.
put on us as little boys or young boys or teenagers? That somebody else's definition of manhood
Hmm.
will put on us, and if we don't fall into that definition, they say you're soft,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So who do you forgive for that? Sykes. I mean, because now you think about it. As a young boy, a teenager, preteen, sometimes people say, "Oh, you gotta be tough. Don't cry." And they, come on, man, be tough, be tough,
Man up.
man up. And if you don't fall into that category of
Mm-hmm.
being manning up, then they say you're soft.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a layer that's put on you. So who do you forgive for that? And when do you forgive? And who teaches you how to forgive and to get rid of those layers?
Well, let me ask you this, Brother Moja, and I'm going to share a little bit of our history. When we first started dating, one of the things that you said to me was, if I make a mistake, I have no problem apologizing for it.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, then becomes my responsibility as to whether or not I forgive it or not, right? And whether I choose to let you know I forgive it if I feel as though a violation or whether I don't. So, who taught you as a male about forgiveness and about apologizing?
I think I started learning that in karate class.
Hmm.
When I was in karate class, my teacher, my sensei, he picked on me, but he said, "Oh, you like fighting?" I was like, "Yeah." He said to me, "Let me show you how to heal."
Mm.
And that kind of got me into the point where I found myself learning how to protect myself by healing myself.
Hmm.
Okay. A lot of people think of karate only as the physical, but the mental and the spiritual side of karate is very important. Even
Hmm.
like, this like teaching your your children in today's world. If you see a van parked there, don't walk by the van. If there's a panel van, be careful. Walk away from the van and stuff.
Hmm.
So as I learned those things in karate, I applied to other parts of my life.
Hmm.
So I was like, I'm not perfect.
Hmm.
So I'm cool in saying, I'm sorry I did this. That wasn't my intention, because it doesn't show that I am less of a man or a human being. It shows, I think, more of humanity in me,
Hmm.
because I could identify that I did something incorrectly, or I did say something that harmed someone
Hmm.
in certain ways. So when I was in the martial arts, I learned how to not just to protect myself, but be a better human being.
Yeah, I thank you for that because I think you're absolutely right. I think we can learn forgiveness in so many different places and spaces and at different times throughout our life. Abigail, you shared your story and really what kind of led you to this work. How did you know that, like this, you were being obedient to that inner divine call?
Right. Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. What else came to mind for you?
So what came to mind to me was that I was being obedient to that calling, and in that, to me, I found my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us going through life and we really don't know a purpose. We really don't know why we're here. We're still searching. Lord, can you tell me what my purpose is? And
Mm-hmm.
for me, because of the way that it was laid out, and I have the tools, I didn't create any of this and I cannot take ownership of it. I was just driven and I was, on a divine purpose to do this. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where this all pretty much came from.
Yeah. And I know you said you were, given basically downloads of what needs to be done in this process. And it's laid out in the book as well. So we definitely encourage people to get the book for yourself and also gift the book to
Mhm.
individuals as well, because forgiveness is, it seems from what I've seen in my couple decades here, to be something that comes with life, right?
Yes.
It is something that we need to learn how to do, and it is something that takes practice, and it is something that is better for our health. What additional tips and strategies, Abigail, do you have? So you talked about identifying the cause, identifying what happened. owning and acknowledging that we are actually in pain, right? So not belittling like, oh, I'm all right, or I don't care, or whatever, but actually own it and acknowledge it. What else? What other
Right.
recommendations?
Acknowledge like your contribution. Like, how are you contributing to this?
What? I have some accountability?
Accountability.
Wow.
See, I told you,
Imagine
Dr.
that.
Wade, I told you, Dr. Walls. Let me give
Because
you a
we go
truth.
around thinking, we go around thinking, oh, they started it and I'm going to
Right.
finish it. What's your contribution?
You
But
act like
sometimes
you know these
we do things
people.
to people,
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
We do things to people to even in that same situation. We may have done something more to hurt them than they
Mm.
did to us. And then we
Mm.
think, oh, well, they started it. I'm going to finish it. So
That's right.
acknowledge your contribution in that situation. How did you contribute to that? Are you,
Mm.
going over it again, over and over your head? Are you turning into something else?
Mm.
I remember one time my ex-husband said something to me, and I kept going over and over and over in my head.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks later, it changed from one thing to something else. And he said, that's not what I said. So then when I thought about it, it reminded me of, oh, yeah, that is what you said. Acknowledge your contribution. How are you contributing to this,
Mhm.
And so another one would be is being able to just let go, tell individuals that you've decided to let go of this situation,
Mhm.
so that you may find yourself
Mhm.
out, say you're in a mall or something like that, and a friend comes up to you and remind you of what happened, and remind you, oh, guess who I saw? I just seen such and such in the mall. And you could have been going along having a great day,
Yeah.
doing your thing. And now you've been pulled back into that. So you want to
Mhm.
let people know, listen, I'm going through the process of forgiveness.
I
I've
love that.
decided to let this go. And so
Yes.
that way you're not pulled back into that, those negative spaces, because people
Yeah.
to you as well.
Yeah, that's a big statement. I would love for people to write that down. I'm going through the process of forgiveness. I think that's important, even just vibrationally within self, so that you're not one lying to yourself that you've already forgiven whatever it is, right? That you're finished. Um, and allowing yourself the space and the pace and the grace. Y'all know I like to rhyme. The space, the pace, and the grace of the process,
Mhm.
and seeing what comes up for you. And like I said earlier, where you're still tender. And it's okay. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It means, as Brother Moja was telling us, that you're human, right? And that maybe there's even more to explore in that area, because there may be some feelings that have yet to be acknowledged. And so it's like, all right, what is still in that area? Dr. Ramontal, what's going through your mind?
I'm thinking about the accountability, and I really love that aspect. I'm just curious about scenarios where the individual really did not have a role
Yeah,
to
yeah.
play, maybe a violation.
Hmm.
And in those cases, is it possible that if they can't seem to forgive, maybe the accountability for them is on the perpetual state of being a victim? Is
Mm.
that part of that too? Maybe
Yeah.
that's their accountability if they play no role in what may have happened to them. But if you can't seem to forgive, you're, to me, always a victim.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then accountability also, and how are you treating yourself?
Mm,
Mhm.
Are you allowing yourself to get past this, or you staying in a state of uh, constantly reminding yourself and stay in a state of negativity? How are you treating yourself when it comes to coping skills? Are you introducing some healthier habits to be able to heal? How are you treating yourself? Are you ready?
right.
Are you angry? It's accountability of taking care of yourself. I have to be accountable for me. And
Mhm.
it's just owning that, and just staying in
Mhm.
that place of, I need to be able to let this go. And if I
Mhm.
don't, then all these other things could possibly occur.
Yeah.
So true. So very true. Yeah, Dr. Wade, I know I posted it up there before, right? She said, Amen,
Mhm.
accountability and own it. Yeah. So I think it is important that we do all of these pieces. And Dr. Ramontal, I'm glad you brought that up because I did. I put in my notes over here. It said acknowledge our contribution, and in parentheses, I put if any, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Because sometimes we're not good evening, good evening. Sometimes it's not right. It wasn't us. We were victimized. And so being able to find ways, healthy ways to re empower ourselves. One of the definitions that I use when it comes to forgiveness, and you can find it on the internet. It says in psychology, forgiveness is the conscious decision to let go of anger and resentment towards someone who has harmed you. It involves changing your feelings, attitudes, and behaviors and expressing compassion towards the person who wronged you. Forgiveness is not about accepting what happened or stopping being angry, right? But it's that conscious decision to let go of the anger and resentment towards the other person. And
Ooh.
it is a process.
I have a question for you with that
Come on.
definition then.
Yes.
The compassion part.
Hmm.
Having the compassion for who they say has wronged them. I
Yes.
know releasing it is good for you and
Yes.
your, but it's very difficult for someone to extend compassion to someone that they are trying to forgive for a wrong. And especially if there's someone who is looking for that closure I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. And,
Yeah.
because a lot of times the closure doesn't have to happen from the individual. From the
Yes.
moment you decide to let it go, that's the
That's right.
closure.
That's right.
Right. But then how do you extend the compassion part if you can barely find a way to forgive?
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
compassion part, I think, comes automatically when you truly have forgiven.
Mm.
You automatically have that compassion. It just comes with it.
They go
And you may
together.
actually find yourself praying for someone. Like you see individuals, even in different court cases where,
Mhm.
someone has been killed and they actually forgive. You find that compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that, that passion, that compassion comes from God. It just comes with it.
Mm.
Yeah.
And,
Supernatural. It has
hmm
to be.
hmm
Well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to continue and talk about this forgiveness to compassion conversation at another time because we got to get ready to jump off and switch platforms, but come back. But before we jump and do what we do, Abigail, please tell people how to get in contact with you and again where they can get a hold of this book.
Okay, so you can contact me on my website, and it's forgivinggiftswellness.com.
Okay.
Um, and my book, Purposeful Healing, is available on Amazon.
Excellent. And in the write up, you will see links for her book, and you will on the YouTube side of life, you will be able to click those links, get to her book, get to her website, and so forth. Dr. Ramontal, how about you? How can people get a hold of you and follow you?
Thank you. Predominantly on YouTube at Medical Tourism RN 812. And on every other platform, it's just Medical Tourism RN.
And again, also her links are there as well. Brother Umoja, his links are there, and links to Kadaga as well as mine. Shout out real quick. I will be at the Collingswood Book Festival this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's in Collingswood, New Jersey. All you got to do is find the Froggy Tea, The Adventures of Froggy Tea and Bunny. The signage will be there. Will be at booth number 57. So please be sure to come check us out. Come get your autographed copies of your books. I'm super excited. I have a new coloring and activity book for them. And then also we got journals, y'all, because we know everything that we're talking about. Sometimes we got to write it out before we can speak it out. All right. So, y'all, we're jumping over into the second half of the show. I made a separate link. That's my bad. That's all right, though. So, we're going to click off here and we're going to hop back on the other channel. So, join us. on the second link that's there. You'll see it. It'll have a picture of myself and Dr. Imani Bailey. So I'll see you in 2 seconds. Let's hop on over there. All right. And I emailed y'all the link if you need to grab it there. Thank
Okay.
you, everyone. All right. See you in a couple seconds.
Okay.